Welcome to H360 Live. My name is Dave Duplay. I'm joined here in the studio this afternoon by my friend and colleague from Healthy h360, Miss Courtland Long. Courtland, it's good to have you back in New York.
It's very good to be back, Dave.
So you spent a few days on the north side of Chicago and a new arrival to the Long family.
Yes, very exciting.
Very exciting. So was everybody calling you Aunt Courtland?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, you know, the weather is finally cooling down here in New York. It's feeling more like the holidays to me.
Yeah, it really is, you know, and this cooling down is happening, I think, across the country, and it really messed up my flight yesterday.
Wow. So they had to de-ice the plane.
Oh, yeah. So the weather in Chicago was perfect all week long, and then wouldn't you know it, the day I'm flying home, it's raining, it's icy, and then it was also snowing. So, yeah, we had to de-ice the plane and anti-ice it and this whole rigmarole.
Wow. So the only day it snowed was the day you were leaving.
Yeah, thanks.
So you did not have a white Christmas.
No, we did not.
Well, neither did we here in New York, but it was a nice, relaxing day anyhow.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have an exciting show for you this afternoon. We have Elizabeth Duplay coming back into the studio for her second visit with us. She is going to be joined by Caity Griffith. They're both high school seniors, and we're going to be shining the spotlight this afternoon on high school stress. You know, Courtland, it really is a big issue, and we're going to shine the spotlight square on it. We're going to hear from two high school seniors on the levels of stress, not only that they experience, but some of their classmates, and some really great, helpful tips on what to do to help manage that stress.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get them in the studio today and talk to them about stress. You know, I know when I was in high school it was really stressful, very competitive, so I'm interested to hear what it's like today. And you know, stress is a really difficult topic to talk about. There's so many different areas you can talk about in terms of stress, and some of those can be mental, physical, family stress, health, and even financial. But to really focus in today, before we get the girls on the show, we're going to be giving some health tips on how to maintain a healthy family household.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting to me because the household dynamics, I think, have really changed over the years, especially here in the Northeast. You know, it used to be you went to high school, you went to college, you got a job, you flew the nest, and, you know, that was it. But now, and especially in the Northeast where it's very expensive to live, you see children going off to college and then coming back home to get their careers started, living with mom and dad. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting dynamic to the household and managing stress. And then, you know, as the population is getting older, you know, these baby boomers are aging. You know, some of the older folks are now moving back in with the children. And so I think that puts a whole level of stress on the household as well. So there's some things that we can do to help manage that, right? We've got some great tips. Yep.
Well, the first tip is to practice healthy living techniques. Now, some of these techniques you should be including the whole family, and they help to reinforce communication within the family as well. So they can be really easy, such as trying new foods, going on trips, or if you can't take the time to go on a trip, maybe take a weekend hiking trip or go on a bike ride together. Those are really great activities for the whole family to enjoy. And children will be more likely to lead a healthy life and less likely to feel stressed out when they're included in these family practices. And teaching stress management techniques to your children at a younger age is going to give them really a big step forward.
Yeah, you know, Courtland, I think you hit it right on the head, getting them involved early. And, you know, organizing family events and kind of coordinating that across the family unit, really important. But I think the major point you hit on is getting them involved early. You know, I happened to see a commercial the other day, and it was all about cooking. And it was involving the family in cooking and what a great activity that is. And, you know, you have the ingredients and everybody kind of has their little job. You know, one cuts it up and the other heats the pan and so forth and so on. I don't cook very much myself, but it looked like a great, interesting family activity, and one that I could see if the dish turned out well and everybody enjoyed it at the end, where it could be, you know, a stress reliever. If not, well, then you're on your own.
Well, it would also teach healthy eating habits as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a great tip. And again, the key point there was involve the children early in the process. The next one here, you know, Grandma Duplay used to say, cleanliness is next to godliness, right? And it's all about reducing stress and kind of keeping a clean house. And, you know, when you take something out and you use it, pick it up and put it back. And,
Right.
you know, you know me, I not only say that in the house, but I say it here at the office. You know,
Oh, yeah.
nothing frustrates me more than when people take stuff out and they use it and it doesn't go back to where it's supposed to be. So cleanliness is godliness. And if you keep a clean environment, a home environment or a work environment, that's going to help reduce the level of stress as well.
Yeah, and you know, my mom tried to instill those values in us early on as well. Growing up in a family of 4, I'm sure you can imagine the house could get messy pretty quickly. But when we had the rule that if you are finished playing with a toy or finished with a board game or something, you have to put it back before you start on your next activity, you know, that really helps to keep the house clean.
Yeah, I think that's a good policy.
It is a good policy.
Right, and here's another one, and I think your mom was spot on. Get them started early and at a young age, right?
Yeah.
So you can teach an old dog new tricks, but it's much easier if you get them in the process very early in their age and life, and then it's just kind of ingrained to them. And the good news is that if you have the right home environment and the right rules and regulations in which to govern by, you carry that over into adulthood, and then it transitions, you know, to your children and so on and so forth.
Well, this transitions me very well into tip number 3.
Okay.
And that is to change one behavior at a time. If there are some behaviors that you have or your family have that you kind of want to change, you should make a list of those behaviors and pace yourself. You don't have to change all of these overnight immediately. You know, give yourself and your family some time to adapt to these changes. Take them one at a time. You know, a couple episodes ago we talked about New Year's Eve resolutions. So make sure your goals are clear and measurable, and be sure to take them one step at a time. Don't get too overwhelmed in the list of changes.
Yeah, that is a great one, right? One step at a time. You know, we have probably a lot of type A personalities that watch this show and they want to change everything overnight. That just isn't going to work, right? And so you're right, one step at a time. And especially, you know, we're coming up on New Year's Eve. Everybody's going to be making their New Year's resolution. So make sure that it's measurable, it's doable. Don't expect immediate results overnight.
Right.
Pace yourself, because you remember the story about the tortoise and the hare? Remember the fast and the slow, but the slow and steady? Remember
Wins
that's
the
childhood
race.
start the race?
Yeah.
Right, and who wins in the end?
The tortoise.
Exactly. So take it one step at a time. Don't expect to change everything overnight, and that's a great health tip. I like that one, Courtland.
Well, thank you. I worked hard on it.
Yeah, you did. You did work hard on it. Well, you know, we sent the interns out into the streets of New York, into Bryant Park, to see just exactly what our New York friends know about all these stress and health tips, and so it's a great video. Courtland, you want to watch it with me?
You know I would love to.
Okay. Guys, roll the video, please.
How many days a week do you say on average do you get stressed out?
How many days a week?
Yeah.
Maybe 2 or 3 at the most.
Okay.
It depends of the day because I get more busy in the course of the weekdays.
3 days out of the week. 3 days? Yeah.
7.
I would say maybe 2 to 3.
2 to 3 days a week?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have stress, how do you practice stress management?
I talk to my parents a lot. I seek guidance from them. And I exercise a lot. I love physical activity. I love exercise.
Usually I try to get away from whatever it is that's stressing me out, to try to calm down
Okay.
and just kind of breathe and think about other things. Just kind of get away from it a little bit, if I can. That's generally what I try to do.
I have to look for the friends around, be with them, take a stroll on the street, and I think after some days I will be okay.
I meditate.
Talking to friends or my boyfriend and exercising is a way to de-stress for me.
How do you maintain a good and healthy relationship?
Do I have any of those? I'm just kidding. I think trying not to make other people do what I want them to do.
Okay.
Letting them be themselves is the best way to try to have a healthy relationship, because you can't make anybody do what you want them to do. So letting people be themselves is the best way. And just accepting who they are and what they do, and you know, that's basically what I do.
I think communication is really important for maintaining relationships. Just being open and honest and knowing yourself as well as the other person.
Okay.
To listen. The first thing to do is to listen.
Okay.
my dad actually says the truth will set you free, and I kind of say what's on my mind, and I also try to like not hurt their feelings, but I try to keep honest with my friends. So
What do you do to create a peaceful environment, such as painting or even having plants around you?
I like being outside.
Okay.
And I like music too. So.
Music?
I have 2 little dogs. I think that helps a
Okay.
lot.
All
Yeah.
right.
And yes, I do have some plants, but I have a lot of craft things that I do. Yeah, just different things. Yeah. So like I do cross stitch, I do some scrapbooking, just different things. And my
Kinda like
focus,
help you out.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's amazing.
I clean.
You clean.
Yeah.
That is a really
It's
good
a big
help.
one.
Yeah.
environmental wise, I actually live by the beach, so I would run to the beach, and I just sit and watch the waves, and it's like really calming and peaceful. So that's how I relax sometimes.
Well, Courtland, what do you think?
Well, it was a great video. You know, as usual, they had our health tips in mind: cleanliness, communication, listen to people. I thought those were all great tips.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. The communication and relationships, that was key, right? We heard that
Yeah.
over and over again. And then it seemed like a few folks kind of get stressed out as the week goes on.
Yeah.
Maybe they're rolling off the weekend and, you know, they've had a good weekend relaxing, and then they kind of get back into the work habit. And then later in the week, the stress builds up right in time for the weekend again.
Yeah, things tend to pile up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so it was a great video. Our interns did a great job, and our New Yorkers, once again, did not disappoint. Well, Courtland, you know what time it is now, right?
Our favorite time.
Our favorite time of the show. Elizabeth Duplay and Caity Griffith are in the studio with us. But before we jump into the Q&A with them, we've got some statistics that we want to talk about, because high school stress and managing it seems to be a big issue, and that's why we're shedding the spotlight on it today. So let me give you a few stats here to think about. So 85% of students feel stressed on a daily basis. That is a very big number. 70% of students feel stress over academic concerns, whether that be getting into the right college or upcoming tests. They're stressed out about that. 74% of students feel stressed about their grades. Absolutely. I know when report card time came out, I shuddered to think about what my grades were going to be, so I was very stressed. 67% of students feel stressed about financial worries, whether that be helping out the household as a high school student or earning scholarships to get into college. They're stressed about that. 54% of students feel stressed about their families, understandable, and 53% of students feel stressed about relationships. So Courtland,
Yeah.
these are some really big numbers. Girls, it's great to have you here today. We're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about being a high school senior, which you guys are. You're on the you're playing the back nine in high school now, right? We're getting ready to go off to college, and this high school stress thing seems to be a really big issue that not only at Healthy h360 we're concerned about, but as Courtland's going to talk about an article that she found, it seems to be an epidemic that we need to really get our arms around. So it's great to have you guys here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to have you girls on the show today to talk about student stress. I think this is a hugely important topic. And not only do we think it's so important, but this article was published in the New York Times actually on Christmas Day on December 25th. And the title is New Jersey School District Eases Pressure on Students, Barring an Ethnic Divide. Now, this article is all about a superintendent of a school near Princeton, New Jersey, who sent a 16-page letter home to the parents because, as he says, the school district is facing a crisis. Now, I want to read a quick excerpt from this article, and it reads, in the previous school year, 120 middle and high school students were recommended for mental health assessments. 40 were hospitalized. And on a survey administered by the district, students wrote things like, I hate going to school. And coming out of 12 years in the district, I've learned one thing, that a grade, a percentage, or even a point is to be valued over anything else. So, you know, Dave and I think that this article really speaks volumes to the stress that kids are facing in schools, and it's really eye-opening as well. You know, I remember being in high school and I thought it was very stressful, but I don't remember 40 students, being hospitalized, or even my friends being recommended for mental health assessments. So this is really scary. I'd like to start out first today, if you guys can sort of explain to us what exactly are we dealing with? What is student stress?
I think student stress is when you have trouble managing all that's on your plate at once. So that can be extracurriculars, plus your schoolwork, plus a social life. So when you feel overwhelmed by everything that you have in front of you, there is healthy stress that kind of lights a fire under you to get things done. But when it gets to the point of you feel really stuck and you can't get anything done, that's when procrastination starts, and that's when you really start to feel your stress level like hitting the roof.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to remember that there is a level of stress that's good for us, that makes us productive, and it's good for us as students to keep us going. But student stress, I think, is really when it gets to be too much and it's not healthy anymore, and it becomes bad for you, for your health and your psychological health.
So I have to ask you guys, all of a sudden now there's articles in the New York Times about high school stress, and everyone's kind of taking a hard look at this. But Caiti, I'm interested to know, what are some of the signs that we may, as administrators in the school or parents, have missed? I mean, there's got to be some signs that we are now either should be looking for or are looking for. What do you think some of those signs are?
Yeah, I think it is kind of easy to miss because a lot of kids hide it well. I mean, there's some obvious ones like being really tired all the time. Sometimes even missing school can be a sign that you're stressed out. Sometimes you just get so stressed out that you just don't go at all. If you're not acting yourself, you're more emotional, like really on edge. That's definitely a big one.
Yeah, I agree with all those, and I really agree with one of the things that was said in the article about just dreading going to school. I think that's a really big sign that something is wrong, when you just feel like you can't even go, that it's just so overwhelming.
Right, so you girls had mentioned that there's two different kinds of stress. A positive stress that really kind of lights a fire under you, makes you want to get your work done, and then there's a second stress that is kind of crippling to people. So do you see that there are different stages in student stress? Where does it kind of begin, and where does it lead to?
I think at school it really starts out where you get an assignment or a bunch of assignments or a test or something, and for some reason you feel like you can't get it done. It seems like it's too hard, or you have a lot of other stuff going on that week, and there's something that kind of triggers it in your mind that this is going to be difficult. And so then I guess the next stage would be that you start to procrastinate and you feel like you don't really know where to start or you don't know what to do, so you just kind of wait and put it off. And then from there, it can be good stress. Then maybe once you get past the procrastination and you do start, then you can become productive and get your work done and be efficient because you're stressed out and you know you need to get it done. But then I think the last stage is that it can either go one of two ways, that you remain productive and you do get it done, or you go into that bad crippling stress and you're either up all night working on it and it doesn't turn out well, or you skip school, or you don't do well on a test.
Yeah, and I think it all depends on the kind of person you are, whether you can deal with the stress or not. Some people crack under that kind of pressure and are unable to remain in the healthy, productive phase, and that's when kids can turn over into the crippling phase, which can really take a toll on the quality of their work or how much sleep they're getting, or even if they're going to be going to school or not.
So if you think about stress in a couple of different buckets, right? So there's stress mentally, and some children, they get up and they just say mentally, I'm tired, I'm not going to school. As the article points out, that they don't want to go to school, or there's some physical signs, right? And sometimes those are just as prominent but go unnoticed. What do you think some of the physical signs are, Elizabeth?
I would say tiredness a lot, acting on edge, very emotional, little things can set them off. I know for me personally, I don't want to go out when I'm stressed because I feel like I won't be able to focus on, if my friends asked me to go see a movie, I just wouldn't be having a good time. I'd be thinking too much about what I should be doing. I know some people break out when they're really stressed out.
Mm-hmm. Caiti, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely agree with breaking out, stress, acne and stuff. But I also think going out is a big one because you either feel like you're not going to be able to have a good time because you're just going to be thinking about everything, or you just don't want to because you just feel like you should be doing your work.
Yeah.
Now the school environment itself can be a major generator of stress. You have to walk the hallways with thousands of kids. You're trying to be popular, trying to create a social life, and then you also have all these assignments. And Elizabeth, last time you were here, we were chatting about cyberbullying, which is a major stressor in people's lives as well. So how prominent do you guys think student stress is, and is there anything we can really do to prevent this?
I think in regards to the bullying thing, if something is going on in school where you don't feel comfortable, that's a really easy way to get stressed out because you won't want to go to school, you won't be able to focus, you won't be able to get your work done. And so I guess having all of those things on your plate at once can really affect the way that you get work done.
Yeah, I think one example that we had talked about was that maybe if you have to give a presentation in front of the class and you feel uncomfortable with the kids because of bullying or something like that, then that can take a toll on your presentation and your work, and it can distract you and have a lot of negative effects on your schoolwork.
Yeah, not only students. Boy, I get a little nervous coming on H360 Live with two intelligent girls like you. I mean, it's very intimidating to me. Let's kind of switch gears for a minute here and talk about financial stress. It seems to me like children these days are really worried about the financial burden. And I'm not just talking about, having the newest iPhone or things of that nature. It goes much deeper, where I think, students are saying, I've got to get this scholarship. My parents are, if they come from a single family home, my mother or my father, they're really relying on this financial help to get me into college. Do you see a lot of that? When you walk the halls of school or you're at lunch with your friends, does that topic come up, and are students really concerned about the financial burden that either currently exists or may lie ahead?
Yeah, I think it can be a big stressor about getting into college and needing a merit scholarship or something like that, because nowadays a lot of times having good grades isn't enough. You might also need to play a sport or do some kind of extracurricular activity to not only get you in, but to get that money. Especially if you play a sport, you might definitely get a lot more money. But then if you do play a sport, that adds a stressor to your schoolwork. And then I think it's also a big stressor within the family that if you are working really hard in school and you're doing really well and you want to go to a school that's going to be really expensive, it creates a really difficult dynamic because your parents, they want to be able to pay for that for you because you've been working so hard, but it's a money thing.
Yeah, exactly that. I have a perfect example is I wanted to apply early decision to one of my top choice schools, which early decision means if you get accepted, you're binding, like it's a binding decision, you have to go there. But one of the problems was the school was so expensive that if I got accepted, I was forced to go there, and if God forbid I didn't get any money, how would my family afford to pay for it? So I wasn't able to apply early decision, so that put a lot of extra stress on me knowing, well, I have to work really, really hard to get into, not only get in without early decision, but also get a scholarship to be able to afford it, and colleges are not cheap. It's like one of the big things that I think about when I'm looking at a college is how much is it?
Yeah. Caity, you make a good point about the extracurriculars and sports. And Elizabeth, you were a competitive cheerleader for many years at the highest levels across the nation. You traveled all around the country competitively cheerleading and national championships. What level of stress did that put on top of you, especially during the school year, with your academics and then having to, fly to California to a competitive match? What was that like?
It was tough because I knew the sports was a key thing of getting into college. It's something that you have that someone else doesn't, so it sets you apart from other people. So it was hard for me to determine what was more important, going to the gym to get that extra hour of practice in, or staying at home and doing an assignment. And not only that, but the traveling for not only competitions, but 3 nights a week, an hour to and from practice. It's getting homework done in the car, being up extremely late, always being tired, always being stressed. So I think the extracurricular, not only for sports, but any kind of extracurricular, can add a lot of extra stress on someone because it's hard to balance all of these things which seem so important in your life at once.
Yeah, not to mention the toll that you put your body through with that competitive cheerleading, the bumps and bruises and soreness, and so it's quite a lot.
Yeah, this brings me back to the article that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. High schoolers are worried about getting into a good college, and this trickles down even further to kids in grade school and junior high. There's a young 4th grader quoted in this article as saying that he's worried about getting into a good school because he doesn't have anything on his resume. You know, it's so sad to me that a fourth grader would be worried about a resume when they're much too young to even have a resume at that age. But I wanna bring this back to us being a really connected society and being on social media all the time and the pressures that puts on us and media in general. You know, we have these images that we should be, you know, focusing on being beautiful, being popular, being smart and everything. So how much of a role do you think it plays wanting to be social and popular into student stress?
Well, I think that's a lot bigger of an issue when you're in the younger ages of high school, when you're a freshman and sophomore. Kind of by junior and senior year, that goes away. So it's really important to remember that it's just temporary. And it's also important to keep in mind that, like, no matter what group you're in, you can, as long as you have a group that's like your thing, then you can feel popular in that group, and it doesn't really matter what the rest of the school thinks about you. So I think that's a really helpful thing to like manage that stress, is to just have a group of friends where you feel acknowledged and respected, like even if the rest of the school doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, like if you're into sports, find other people who are into sports or theater or anything really that you enjoy. If you find other people that enjoy that, you can be popular in your own little crowd instead of worrying about what absolutely everyone thinks of you.
Yeah. So I know, you know, some schools have programs, especially we talked about cyberbullying the last time. There's a lot of focus on that. But when it comes to stress in your particular school, are there programs or is there an outlet of some kind where maybe if the stress is just really mounting up, you can go and kind of have that, I don't know, sanctuary where you can relieve some of that stress?
Well, our school, I think we talked about this last time, does have a therapy dog named Lucy. And so when students are feeling really emotional and overwhelmed, they can go visit her and just play with her. And that's a really good way to like relieve some stress. But teachers are always pretty much open-minded, and they do know that, like in our case at our school, you're dealing with 8 classes at a time. So they do take this into like consideration when they're assigning like big assignments or big tests. So they think about that. And we also do have guidance counselors that you can always go see to go get some help.
Yeah, I think guidance counselors are really helpful to manage your stress and talk about your stress, but really the best way to like eliminate the stress from the start is to go right to the teacher and talk to them if you're feeling overwhelmed.
Right, so you had mentioned, you know, you guys are dealing with 8 classes all at a time, and, you know, your teachers are assigning all these things. You've got tests piling up. Do schools do anything to monitor the stress that you're under? Do the principals or superintendents say, you know, kids can only have 4 papers due in the same week or 3 tests in the same week, anything like that?
I think unfortunately at our school, because we do go to such a big school, our school has, you know, 3,300 kids, the superintendents and the principals aren't really able to be that connected and say things like that, like you're only allowed to have this many tests and papers a week. Really the only way that you can get that as a student is to go to the teacher, and like we both have a teacher that will sometimes say like, is this an okay day for us to have a test? But unfortunately not all teachers are that open-minded, but that's really the best way to get that kind of like care.
And our school also does offer this thing after schools, 3 days a week, called tutorial. And it's just a 50-minute period where you can go and visit any teacher, so you can go get a little more personal one-on-one help with them, instead of, if you're nervous, like asking for help in front of the entire class, or you just need a little bit of extra time on an assignment. You can go in during those times and talk with them and get some extra help. So that's really helpful.
So, you know, some stress obviously is brought on just by the day-to-day workload, academics, athletics, theater, and some stress is brought on by just plain drama, right, of being in high school. And come on, you girls know it's chatty and it's cliquey, right? And you know, you get all those dynamics going on. How would a student manage the unnecessary stress? I mean, you guys point out, make a good point, right? There's some stress you have that light a fire under you and get you motivated. There's other stress that really bring you down, and there's this other stress that's just white noise in the background. You know, how can you manage some of that white noise or really unnecessary stress that doesn't do anybody any good? How do you manage that?
I think what we said before with the whole popularity thing, find what you enjoy and kind of stick with that. You shouldn't keep toxic people in your life. If they bring negativity to you, you shouldn't allow that to come into you. You should always keep like a positive mindset. I know one of the things you said before about having like a clean environment, like that's really helpful. Like in my mind, like clean people that bring good energy to you are extremely important.
I think it's also really important to just be confident in whatever it is that you do or you're passionate about. Like just know your own identity, and then it's easier to kind of block out the rest of the stuff that can stress you out.
Yeah, you know, you both bring up an excellent point, because I say this at work all the time. Know what you're good at and know what you're not so good at, and then hire people around you that are doing things really well that you don't do so well. And then stay out of their way and let them excel at those great things that they do so well, right? So you can't be all things to all people. You have to know what your strengths are. You have to focus on that. You both make a good point about getting rid of people that don't bring positive energy to your life, right? And so all of those things are good. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to give Courtland the opportunity to ask the last question here.
Is there any last piece of advice about managing student stress that you have for high schoolers, junior high students, and even possibly college students or those who are transitioning into college?
I think not comparing yourself to everyone around you is really important. You can't look at the valedictorian of your class and hold yourself to the same expectations that that person holds them to. Like you said, you need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and keep a realistic expectation for what you want to do. Like applying to schools, you need to, it's obviously okay to have dream schools and reach schools, but also keep in mind like your target areas. You need to know like realistically what you are capable of, and like what Caity said, own that and be confident with that. You don't need to be like looking around at everyone else, seeing what everyone else is doing. You need to worry about like what's important to you and like what you're good at.
Yep.
Yeah, going back to what I said before and kind of going off of that about being confident, I think especially as a senior applying to colleges where you're going to get a lot of rejections and deferrals, it's really important to, again, know yourself and know your identity outside of school, because especially with colleges, there's so many things. You can get rejected, and sometimes it just doesn't have anything to do with you, and that's really hard to get the first one and know that you've done everything you can and it still doesn't work out. So it's really important to have an identity and have something that you're proud at that isn't dependent on what someone else thinks of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thanks for coming in today. You're going to both go off to college. I hope you keep us in mind. Come back. Let us know how you're doing. Come back on the show. We'd love to have you.
Thank
So
you.
thanks
Thank
again
you.
for coming in. We'd like to thank our viewers today for tuning in, and we'd like to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthyo360.com, and our podcast can be found in the iTunes store. Well, Courtland, we love social media, and I think you have something to say about that.
Absolutely. Healthyo360 can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. We use the hashtag #RealStories when posting, and we'd really appreciate it if you would do the same. On behalf of Dave Duplay, myself, and the entire Healthyo360 family, we hope you all have a very happy and healthy new year, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
I never had so much love on my